I am hoping and praying it is possible. It will be one of the greatest stories the Championship has ever seen. If you asked me a couple of months ago, I'd have said no chance. I'm now coming around to the idea that Derby can stay up.
The reason why I'm sort of hesitating is because I think they've outperformed themselves already this season.
Luton are brilliant to playing on the break. They're defensively solid. And I think when you've got the likes of, and they're a Premier League side, heading to Kenilworth Road, it may rattle them a bit which Premier League forward is going to want to come up against Jake Cooper in the air. You're not going to be beating Jake Cooper in the air. And when you've got Ryan Leonard crunching you in midfield as well, there are a lot of variables going Millwall's way, aren't they?
He's wrongly in the conversation every time it's discussed about best forward in the Championship history.
I'm just shocked because he was so young and was playing regularly in a very talented Fulham side. He got a lot more plaudits than his performances actually deserved. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Stopwatch, the first episode of 2022. New year, new Stopwatch. I say new Stopwatch, it's exactly the same. It's still the Championship show with a little twist. 5 topics, a 2-minute timer, and 2 hosts, Ryan, Justin, from the Second Tier podcast. Let's get right into it. Justin will start off with a big one, with Blackburn in good form. Middlesbrough strengthening in the window, and Bournemouth back to the top of the league. Which side will be the team to beat in 2022?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that's going to open up a lot of debate. But I think the team that is the team to beat in 2022, I think it's going to be obviously Fulham for me. I think they're gunning for the top of the table. They're going to have a lot of teams wanting to work them out and pick up points against them. And then when you've got the likes of Blackburn, West Brom, and Bournemouth, in my opinion, all going for the top 2 places. Yeah, they're going to want to see them. They're going to want to see Fulham drop points.
Yeah, I think Fulham it's only a matter of time before they get back into form into it. They've had this sticky patch now. I think that might be it for the rest of the season. I can see them being the team that we saw prior to this sticky run of form, who are just bashing everyone out of the way.
Yeah, no, it's hard to disagree. They are going to pick up again. I think we've seen Bournemouth do the same thing. Obviously, the postponements over the Christmas period haven't helped, but as you say, they've had enough time to sort of relax, I think, recalculate matters and get going again for the second half of the season, because it's going to be massive for them. As I say, they've got teams behind them who are staring them down. Well, not behind them, they're ahead of them at the minute. So it's going to be a big second half of the season for Fulham.
I've gone for the team who I keep ringing the bell of all the time at the moment. That's Sheffield United, who I think could be quality in the second half of the season. Paul Heckingbottom has got the players playing with confidence. He's got them playing in the right positions, and they look like they're playing with a significantly more identifiable style of play compared to how they were before. And I really can see them having seasons similar to what we've seen in the past with the likes of Villa, Fulham, Watford to a lesser extent last season, where they just run through anyone who stands in their way in the second half of the season. And I think they can run it close to finishing in the top 2. It's going to be a big ask for them actually to finish in the top 2, but they can definitely, worry those who are going to be hoping to finish in the top 2 coming at the end of the season. What do you think, Justin, quickly?
No, I agree. They've got a big second half of the season coming up. They've got a good squad. They've got a manager who knows how to get the best out of them. They're going to be teams that are going to be trying to get ahead of them, and they're for me, they are a dark horse for the automatics and an outsider for the playoffs as well.
Next question, please, Justin.
With no losses in 4 and the gap to survival shortened to just 11 points, is the great escape possible for Derby? And how do you expect this month to pan out for the Rams?
I am hoping and praying it is possible. It will be one of the greatest stories the Championship has ever seen, maybe even the greatest story the Championship has ever seen. Derby have been dealt so many blows, yet here they are still battling it out to stay in the division. If you asked me a couple of months ago, I'd have said no chance. I'm now coming around to the idea that Derby can stay up, and the percentage chance of them staying up is growing week by week. It's truly remarkable. A lot does depend on what happens in January, doesn't it? Because if they do end up selling 4 or 5 of the best players, then they may be a bit stuffed and they may have no choice in selling those players either. If they keep hold of the vast majority of the squad, then they've got every chance.
Like you say, January is massive for Derby. It's all about keeping the squad intact as much as they can. And for me, if they are going to get out of the relegation zone, they've got to add 2 or 3 more faces into the mix as well, because they are short of quality. The last 4 games, the 4-game unbeaten run, has shown what Derby are capable of. But can they sustain that again for the second half of the season? It's an interesting theory to go off. I think they can. As I say, it just depends what happens in January. It's going to be massive, and they've got to rely on teams above them dropping points, which isn't always the best position to be in.
I'm going to keep hammering home this point as well. They've still got Christian Bielik to come back. Christian Bielik was their best player last season, and he was there for about a month before he got injured again. If he stays fit for the rest of the season, then my oh my, that is going to be such a huge boost. And this Derby team, full of confidence at the moment, they're all fighting from the same corner. If you add in the quality of Bielik as well, then the percentage chance of them staying up is only going to get bigger and bigger. Justin, after 6 games unbeaten, can Huddersfield sustain their playoff bid?
Yes, maybe. January is a big month for every team, and the reason why I'm sort of hesitating is because I think they've outperformed themselves already this season, which is why obviously they're in the top 6. I would have had them down as a lower mid-table side at this point, so they are doing incredibly well. So if they are to sustain it, they have to add some real quality to their squad. Now, do they have the budget to do it in January? I don't think they do. Is there room to manoeuvre in the squad? Possibly not. So it's very difficult to see them sustaining it in the second half of the season. But as I say, if they have a good month this month in terms of transfers, then they possibly they could do it.
I really like the job Carlos Corberán has done this season. Defensively, they're so different to how they were last season. I mean, last season they were a bit of a mess at the back, but here we are now. Levi Colwill has been superb at the back. Lewis O'Brien's playing probably the best football of his career so far. My main issue is these striker positions and the amount of chances they create for those strikers. Josh Cromer's had a disappointing season by his standards. Sinani, I haven't been too impressed with. Danny Ward's a good striker and has scored quite a few goals this season, but you need a lot more from other players around him for him to be as useful as he is. So, yeah, I'm looking at Huddersfield. I think there are teams who are much better suited to finishing in the playoffs. I can name at least 4 or 5 teams off the top of my head who are probably not even in the playoffs right now, but are more likely to finish in the playoffs than Huddersfield, because they've also played games in hand as well. So I think it's unlikely that Huddersfield will be hanging around the playoffs come the end of the season. But you can't take anything away considering the fact that Huddersfield were awful in the second half of last season. Corberán has certainly done a much better job, and he looks to be growing as a coach as well. Justin, what's the next question?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. With the FA Cup coming up this weekend, which side do you think are best suited to an FA Cup run?
I've been racking my brains over this one. I think for me, my ideal championship side to have an FA Cup run would be one who is defensively solid, likes to play against the big teams, can hit teams on the break, and is also got the positive of when they're at home, they've got that intimidating home atmosphere. And the team that ticks all the boxes there for me is Luton. I think Nathan Jones, because Luton, they've got a chance to get into the playoffs, but it's a slim chance. So maybe Nathan Jones will be looking at it now thinking, right, we'll have a run in the cup, make a load of money in the process as well. And yeah, give it a right old go. Luton are brilliant at playing on the break. They're defensively solid. And I think when you've got the likes of, and they're a Premier League side heading to Kenilworth Road, it may rattle them a bit. They may start bricking it, the thought of coming up against Luton. So I think Luton could be a team to keep an eye out for in the FA Cup this season. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, my formula is similar but different in certain ways. It's home grounds being very important. It's not having too much to play for in the season, so not having the threat of relegation or possibly being in the playoffs. So the team that I'm going for is Millwall. Now Millwall have got a good history with the FA Cup, especially in the last 20 years. They have progressed quite far in the last 20 years. And as you say, with home grounds, they've got a good home ground to welcome big teams. You look at the Den and how much an atmosphere can be that can be created there. I go back to an FA Cup game a few years ago against Everton where it was sodden with rain. The ball was not moving on the pitch, and it looked very uncomfortable for the Everton players. I think Millwall got a result in that game as well. So for me, yeah, it's teams that don't have too much to play for, have a good home crowd, and as I say, it's the FA Cup, a bit like the Championship. Anything can happen.
Yeah, and which championship forward, which Premier League forward is going to want to come up against Jake Cooper in the air? You're not going to be beating Jake Cooper in the air. And when you've got Ryan Leonard crunching you in midfield as well, there are a lot of variables going Millwall's way, aren't they? Just in its second tier retro time. This is the part of the show where we look back on championship history and giving a very interesting question each week. And this is probably the most interesting question we've had so far here on the Stopwatch. Who is the most overrated player in championship history? I'm very interested to see who you say.
I've gone with Dwight Gale. And the reason why I've gone with Dwight Gale is because every time a player is linked, or anytime there's a conversation about one of the best strikers in championship history, Dwight Gale's name pops up every time. And I don't know why. He's had 3 seasons in the championship, 2 of which were at West Brom and Newcastle United, where Newcastle had an unbelievable squad at championship level, managed by Rafa Benitez. You're going to succeed in that side. He's scored a lot of goals, I'll give him that, but he's also played for 2 teams that were outrageously good going forwards. That West Brom team under Darren Moore for 2/3 of the season were basically just attacked. They didn't defend. So for me, it's Dwight Gale, mainly because he's wrongly in the conversation every time it's discussed about best forward in the championship history.
I'm just shocked, Justin. When it comes to finishers, clinical finishers, how can you completely discount Dwight Gale?
I'm not discounting Dwight Gale. He's a good finisher, but for me, he's always in the conversation for any big teams wanting to bring a player into their side in the championship, as well as one of the best forwards in championship history. He's only had 2 seasons, maybe 2.5 seasons in the championship, which for me is just not enough.
I'm amazed. Absolutely amazed. I've gone for one which I think may upset Fulham fans. I'm going for Ryan Sessegnon. And the reason I say him is because I think he was one of those who, because he was so young and was playing regularly in a very talented Fulham side, he got a lot more plaudits than his performances actually deserved. I think, obviously, he was a very good player at the time. And for someone so young, he was playing outstandingly well. Not as well as people were talking about. People were saying this guy is going to be future England starter and be a world beater. I never got that from watching him. I think he had a few very good games, but you got to keep in mind that was a very talented Fulham side, and you only have to see where his career's gone now, where he is basically fallen into the abyss, hasn't he, and just disappeared off the face of the earth, to see that maybe the hype was a bit bigger than his actual talent at the time. Admittedly, very talented for such a young player, but I think not as talented as people made out. Would you agree?
I disagree massively. It's an interesting debate. I disagree mainly because I think that the move to Spurs has shunted him massively. For a kid playing left back, left wing to hit double figure goals in any side, and he was 17, 18 when he did that. I think is worth the credit he receives. I think he's a very good player. Just a wrong move to Spurs for me. That's done him in, not anything else.
Fair enough. There we go. Another episode of the Stopwatch. Episode 16. Happy 16th birthday to the Stopwatch. You can now buy a lottery ticket. Well done to the Stopwatch. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Particularly interested to hear what you guys have to say for the most overrated player in championship history. That's sure to stir up some sort of debate. Drop us a like as well if you've enjoyed, and please subscribe for more content like this. We've been Second Tier Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Second Tier Pod. I'm Brian Dilks1. That's Justin Peach 27.